First of all, let's have a look at the government's plans to make the streets of Britain safer, particularly for women, in the light of the tragic murder of Sarah Everard. Immediate steps, we're told, aimed at improving safety for women and girls in England and Wales have been announced by Number 10 after Sarah Everard's tragic death. Among them is an additional £25 million for better lighting and CCTV, as well as a pilot scheme which would see plainclothes officers in pubs and clubs. Labour said the funding would replace only a fraction of cuts the government has already made. Let's get the reaction now of Harriet Marsden, journalist and author of Don't Lose Your Head, Life Lessons from the Six Wives of Henry VIII. Hi, Harriet.
Hi, how's it going?
Really good. Brilliant to have you on the show. What do you think your sort of essential first hot take on this idea of the Prime Minister's to make the streets safer?
Well, I think that we can all agree plainclothes officers in pubs and clubs do not protect women from assault, harassment, rape, murder. They cannot. I mean, it's so fundamentally ridiculous as an idea. It's actually laughable. You know, what are these plainclothes coppers going to do? They're going to sit in a corner and just wait for a man to grope a woman and then throw the man out on the street. And then when that man is still there waiting for the woman to come out when she walks home, they're going to be where? You know,
well, it shows a bizarre ignorance, doesn't it, Harriet, about the way that a potential offender would actually behave. And these people are not just limited to their local Wetherspoons on curry nights.
It's incredibly condescending. It also demonstrates a basic lack of awareness about the real safety issues that face women. And the majority of assaults, rape, harassment, even murder, the majority is perpetrated by men who know the women in question. So unless these plainclothes officers are going to accompany women home and be in their homes with them where women statistically are at most danger, then it's just nonsense. Now, there are some parts that they've suggested that have been shown to make a difference. Lighting on the streets has been shown, but as has been argued, this is a drop in the ocean compared to the cuts and the severe lack of funding to properly prosecute rape and assault and harassment, and the conviction rates that have been plummeting, and the women's refuges that have shut. So it's a band-aid on a gaping wound.
Well, it is, and it's also deck chairs on the Titanic, isn't it? I mean, it also assumes that these sort of awful people, these violent men, are somehow exclusively nocturnal, which is not true. Women can be attacked at any day, at any time of the day or night.
Of course. And to be honest with you, women are probably safer, or certainly feel safer, in a bar or a club where there are lots of people around to help them than they might do walking home alone, or taking a taxi, or getting on public transport, or even, you know, going to their own homes. So it's ignorant, and it's condescending, and it's also just unbelievably insufficient, especially seeing as we've been having these conversations throughout the week. And the Court of Appeals has just dismissed a case that was brought against the CPS from End Violence Against Women and Girls to protest against the plummeting conviction rates for rape. Meanwhile, they're going to come up with what? A few more streetlights and some narcs in a bar.
Well, indeed. And as my colleague Ian Collins said earlier today on talkRADIO, it would be redolent of Stasi Germany to have ununiformed officials hanging around in bars listening to people's conversations.
Well, also, I don't understand how they think a plainclothes officer will know what they're seeing and when. You know, women are actually very attuned to this sort of thing, and women will look out for other women in clubs and bars, and they often do step in and move people away. You know, there's kind of an unspoken solidarity among women in places where there are lots of drunk men. We all look out for each other. We watch each other's drinks, we watch each other's bags, we watch each other's backs. And I fail to see how a plainclothes police officer can do that any better than me.
Indeed. So what needs to happen if you've got the Home Secretary's ear, Harriet? What sorts of measures would you roll out in order to feel safer yourself as somebody, you know, going out for dinner, coming home late at night? What would reassure you?
I mean, I think the most important places that the resources, the very scant resources, should be directed are at things like trying to tackle plummeting rape conviction rates, which are an absolute scandal. I mean, we're talking a 30% drop in 2019 to 20 compared to the year before. Now, that is unacceptable. and also trying to look at the amendments for the domestic abuse bill and look into how you can support women in the home, which is statistically going to be the most dangerous place with intimate partner abuse. So in terms of me just coming home, how I feel safer, it's not about whether or not you can treat the symptoms of the problem. It's whether or not you can treat the cause. And at the moment, the deterrents just aren't there.
Well, indeed so. What were your thoughts about the idea of a 6 p.m. curfew for men? Now, I actually spoke to the Green Party member of the House of Lords who posited that suggestion, and she admitted to me, with a half smile, that really she was provoking a debate and she was deliberately throwing a cat among the pigeons. But what did you think when you saw that headline?
Well, I thought it was very funny because it was, of course, obvious what she was doing. She was subverting the original trope of telling women, as I have been told my whole life, to not go out at night after dark, come home by myself after dark, as I have been told, like everyone else, my whole life. So she subverts that. And of course, all women know that it's very tongue in cheek, that it's very provocative, that it's trying to make people think about the reverse situation. And of course, the men all really showed their colours by massively reacting against it and thinking that it's a serious suggestion, which of course it's not. It's just making the point that that's what we have been told for decades.
What about this idea that because of a minority of truly dreadful male human beings, that we're essentially criminalising half the population? I mean, do you think that it just went a little bit anti-men in the debate around the tragic murder of Sarah Everard?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because we're actually not criminalising half the population. In fact, the problem is we're not criminalising anywhere near enough. I mean, if you look at the conviction rates, as I've mentioned, rape is effectively now legal. That means that we're not criminalising the few horrible predatory people that perpetrate violence against women and girls. So this idea that conversations around safety of women are somehow criminalising all men it's just completely illogical.
Yeah, so what really needs to happen by the sounds of it, what you're saying is that we invest in policing, that we beef up the criminal justice system.
No.
Go on.
I've seen what investing in policing did on Saturday night. I'm not saying invest in any more policing.
Although I guess wouldn't you be suggesting that you want coppers to catch these rapists and murderers and then have a properly functional criminal justice system with which to pursue justice for the victims?
Well, yes, but I think also you have to consider that the mayor's own statistics estimate that 5 out of 6 sexual assaults go unreported, which suggests that women are so convinced that the perpetrators are not going to be brought to justice, that they don't actually report them in the first place. So it's not a question of funding more policing.
Right.
It's a question of properly funding the justice system.
Right. Yeah, who, of course, saw cuts to their budget, Harriet, of 40% during the years of austerity. And it's no wonder that we're now dealing with this legacy. And given the fact that there's a huge backlog in cases because of the pandemic, one can't be too optimistic that change is coming anytime soon.
Unfortunately, I agree with that. And I think that in order not to be defeatist and in order to try and maintain some sort of hope after the week we've had, which was very reminiscent of the weeks of Me Too in 2017, where women had to share their trauma online, to a lot of performative shock from men and horror and, oh, we must end this and we must do this. And then, of course, look at us now 4 years later and nothing's happened, nothing's changed. In fact, some things have gone worse. So it's hard not to feel pessimistic, but definitely I would say that the cuts to the justice system and the courts and the backlog of cases is really where, if anything, is really where it needs to start. And we do not need plainclothes police officers in bars and clubs. I mean, if you have bizarre. The resources, buy us a taxi home.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Harriet, I mean, just to put it in perspective, I'm afraid I'm a veteran of having my motorbike stolen all the time. And it's a really rubbish 125 little thing that looks like I'm delivering pizzas. But it's, I'm afraid it regularly disappears from outside my property. And I've got to the point now where I don't really bother calling the police, actually, because I'm not going to pursue an insurance claim. And it's just such a sort of hopeless process. And it's like I actually don't want to waste their time. And similarly, mobile phones get snatched out of people's hands. And I'm afraid that, again, people don't report that. The idea that should be on the same sort of scale as a sexual attack is truly horrific in our modern society, isn't it? The idea that those crimes could be comparable in terms of the pursuit of justice is truly wrong.
No, I absolutely agree. And the problem is that women are so desensitized. I don't know a single woman who would bother to report harassment or assault. You know, I've seen cases shot down by HRs. I've seen women dismissed. I've seen men, police officers refuse to even look at CCTV. And I've also seen women who have reported a rape only to have it dismissed and have their name dragged through the mud, to have their private lives poured over by lawyers and the CPS, and it has caused them more damage. So I can't understand why the onus should be on women to report what they are punished for reporting.
Massively important issues, and we're so grateful that you've raised them, Harriet. Harriet Marsden is a journalist and author of Don't Lose Your Head, Life Lessons from the Six Wives of Henry VIII.